All right, and we are live. Welcome back with Murphy Mack to another episode of the Fitness Beginner Podcast, where we help you get started on your fitness journey. What's going on, everybody? Happy New Year! I think this is the first podcast of the New Year, and we have got a special guest for y'all coming on to the podcast to talk about a very important topic. So, without further ado, we'll go ahead and bring him on. I have the privilege of hosting Dr. George Burroughs. Let me fix the screen. All right, there we go. So Dr. Burroughs is actually my chiropractor. See, he's the owner of Atlas Chiropractic in Saraland, Alabama, and he is also the host of the Get Healthy Alabama podcast. And his podcast is actually where I kind of got the idea of doing this podcast because he left a lot of questions to be answered out there. So I'm here today to pick his brain and answer some of those questions. But the podcast that I'm referring to is one that he did about sunlight. So, as a very fair skinned, freckly person, the Sunlight podcast really caught my attention. So, I had to bring him on to ask him some questions today. So, I'll let you go ahead and introduce yourself to the people and let them know anything you want to tell them up front.
I appreciate you inviting me on. My name is George Burroughs, a doctor of chiropractic for 36 years now, and I love things natural when it comes to health and healing, and I think sunlight is a huge part of that. Sensible sunlight exposure is what I call it. I'm looking forward to answering your questions about it.
Okay, so we'll start it off with the generic question for most people, just to get them started. And so, why is sunlight just important in general? So, what does sunlight do for you, just on a very basic terms?
So you broke up there. Say that again. Ask again, please.
Yeah, sorry, it's breaking up a little bit. So, just for on very generic terms, why is sunlight important
Yeah.
in general to get? I'm sorry, I
Well,
didn't catch
the
that.
simplest way to explain that is no, that's right. The simplest is that we would have no life at all without the sun. Nothing would be alive. No plants, no animals, no fish. The sun is vital to life.
Exactly. So, I know you preach that we need more sunlight than what we get. We've probably been told wrong in the past that hey, we need to get out of the sun as much as possible. So, with that being said, how much sunlight do you think we should get in general? I know it's going to differ a little bit from person to person, but just
But,
a rough idea.
well, it's definitely for person. Someone who light skinned, fair skinned, like you are, doesn't get as much sun as opposed to a person who is, African American, a black person. They're dark skinned. They need more sunlight to get the vitamin D and all the other benefits. So the range is quite. And I always try to emphasize to my patients, you have to be sensible about the sun exposure. In fact, this is right up your alley. It is like working out. If you gym and you lift too little weights, like not enough weight, you don't get any response from your body. Your muscles aren't going to get stronger. If you lift too much weight, you're going to hurt yourself.
Mm-hmm.
There's the right dose, there's the Goldilocks effect, if you would. Too little, too much. You want the right amount, and the right amount is really the amount that's going to allow you to get a tan. I believe everybody should have a suntan. And again, someone fair skinned like yourself will not need as much sun to get that.
Mm-hmm. So I know. So skin tones obviously is a factor in how much sun you need. But would you say other things like your age or your sex or any kind of previous health conditions that you have would that affect the amount of sunlight that you need?
Well, yes, actually, and one factor that does make a big impact is pharmaceutical drugs. Some drugs will interact in an adverse, a negative way with too much sunlight. But in general, there really shouldn't be a big change as you age in the amount of sunlight. I think as a whole, we all get too little sunlight because we've been told the sun is bad, which I think is one of the most ridiculous statements, ever. And we'll dive into this in a minute, but there's so many benefits you get from the sun. And yes, there's some risks, but we'll talk about those. Measuring the risks versus the benefits.
Yeah. So when it comes to getting sunlight, do you need direct sunlight to your skin? Like, can you wear clothes and it still be beneficial, or does it need to be skin to skin the best that you can?
Okay, so physiologically, the more skin you expose to the sun, the better. But
Hmm.
that's not always, practical, of course.
Hmm.
So if you're at the beach and you're in your own backyard and you just go out there, as men in just a pair of shorts, that's ideal. And again, you don't. Let me say this too. This is probably rule number one. You do not want to burn. You do, like you and I could both go to the beach, and my complexion's a little darker than yours, so I could stay out there longer before I would burn than you. So you have to be aware of that. You do not want to burn, but you do want to expose as much of your skin as possible. And since you bring that up, ideally you don't want to be wearing glasses or sunglasses. Now, again, there's a time that you're going to have them, but if you could be, you still there?
Yeah. Yeah.
In
I'm
the
here.
morning or evening, without sunglasses, that's ideal.
Yeah. I notice like the older I get, the more sensitive to the sun my eyes get. So I feel like now I need sunglasses more than I did when I was younger.
And yeah, that might that really might be. There's a lot of factors that could go into that, but it might be that your eyes aren't used to the sun. And if you started to get a little more sun, your eyes would adapt to that as well.
Yeah. I
Yeah, your
tried
eyes
to.
have. Go ahead.
I trying to like, on my runs now. I'm trying to not wear sunglasses because I used to always wear them or a hat. So lately, I take my hat off and I don't wear any sunglasses. But I'm still running early in the morning, so I'm not getting that much sunlight. But I still try not to wear them if I can.
That's ideal. If you cannot wear them in the mornings, and you believe it or not, you're getting good sun in the morning. That sunlight in the morning is not as bright, it's not as strong, but there's more that does more for your circadian rhythm. That helps. That morning sun does so much to set the internal clocks of your body. It tells your body, hey, it's morning. There's so much about morning sun. And I'll say it this way: I think everybody should be outside for sunrise. As do your best to be outside for sunrise.
So speaking of that, I get up earlier before the sun rises. So what would you suggest for someone like me that's up before the sun? Does that still kind of have a factor on your circadian rhythm, even though I've already been up for maybe 2 hours or so before the sun comes up? Should I still go outside at 7, even though I've already been up for a
Yes,
couple
yes,
hours?
that's a great question. Yes, so you have these two clocks in your body. Well, think of it this way. You know how we all our cell phones and TV and even in our car, those clocks are automatically set to the master clock. Like you don't have to. Like when the time changes, I don't have to adjust my clock. I mean my phone. It does it automatically. But in
Mhm.
my house, like on my stove or in my bedroom, I can put those clocks a few minutes ahead or a few minutes behind. What I'm getting at is your body has two clocks. You have a master clock in your brain. It's called the suprachiasmatic nucleus. You don't have to remember that, but that gets set by the sunrise. So it's kind of like the conductor of the orchestra. That you want that conductor. You want your brain to see that morning sunlight because it's telling the master conductor, hey, the day is starting. You know, secrete some insulin. Get my blood pressure a tiny bit raised, my breathing a little bit raised. You're ready. Shut off melatonin, which is a sleep hormone. But then, whatever time you wake up and whatever time you eat, there's other clocks in your body, kind of like the clocks in my house that I set, by myself on my stove. I was saying they're not automatically set. Those are set to what time you wake up and what time you eat. So as long as you kind of do that on a consistent basis, you keep your wake up time pretty consistent. Those two clocks, the master one in the brain and the ones that are in every organ of your body, they'll get in sync. So yes, to answer your question, yes, still go outside at sunrise without sunglasses. That's ideal.
So I know you're saying the sunrise is very important, but would you say is there any other time in the day that it's most important to get sun, or the sun light is better that part of the day
Well,
than any other part?
they're all important. It's kind of like what's more important to do, weightlifting or flexibility or cardiovascular. You want to do them all. So the
Mm.
morning sunlight has its own benefits we just talked about. You do want to get out in the middle of the day for a little bit at least. This summer it gets real hot here. You don't want to be out long, but even a minute or two, that's when you get the most vitamin D. Is during that midday sun. And there's so many benefits to vitamin D. It's good for the bones, good for the immune system. And that's when you're most likely to get tan. You want to build up reserves of vitamin D. But that's midday. You want to get some of that midday sun. And then in the evening, you want to get that evening sun. Your brain recognizes, that the sun is now in the west, not in the east. And that evening sun starts to tell your body to produce melatonin, as the sun is setting, and melatonin is going to help you sleep better. So you want to spend at least a few minutes, if you can, morning, midday, and evening. And you just do your best. I know it's hard for everybody to hit all three, but try your best to do that.
So would you say since midday is the best for vitamin D, is that in correlation due to like the UV rays? So I know
Yes,
UV rays is okay. That's what I was because I know UV ray when it's high, that's when you tend to get burnt more.
yes, you
So they
got
kind
it.
of works hand in hand with vitamin D.
Yes, exactly.
Okay,
But
that makes sense.
if we're now in early January, if somebody like someone that's fair skinned, today was kind of rainy, but like yesterday we got up to mid 50s, but the sun was shining. If you were outside in the middle of the day, sat in your backyard for 20 minutes, just in a pair of shorts, ate your lunch outside, you start to build, the basis of a tan. You can build. So when it gets hotter, is what I'm saying, months from now. But if you keep working on building up the tan now, because right now you could take 20 minutes of midday sun, because it's not,
Mhm.
the UV is not that strong, but you start to get a base tan January, February, March, because we live, in Alabama, and on some days you can actually go do that.
Yeah, I I struggle to get a tan. I feel like I get a lot of sun and it's hard for me to tan. I feel like I get burnt and then I go back to the same color I was before. I just get more freckles when I get burnt. So when it comes to so you mentioned earlier there's a lot of risk associated to sunlight. And this is kind of the main reason I'm drawn to the whole sunlight topic because as a fair-skinned person, I have lived underneath sunscreen my entire life. And that's kind of what I want to get in. So like at what point do you know you need to put on sunscreen? I know you mentioned earlier
Yeah,
you don't want to get burnt. Well,
right.
obviously like if I go to the beach in the summer, I'm getting burnt within like 30 minutes. I'm burnt. So
Okay.
like I don't even go 30 minutes with no sunscreen. I put sunscreen on from the time I get to the beach because I know I'm going to be there for a while. So,
Yeah, that would be okay. That's a good use of sunscreen. However,
mhm,
what I'm saying is this: so you're not going to the beach on a hot day in January because we're not hot enough. You're not gonna burn today. Is what I'm saying at
no,
this
no.
time of the year, and this is why it's so important whenever it's sunny out in January and February to get outside, get in your backyard. Again, just a pair of shorts, and get that sun on your body. Start to build. You'll build a base. I think so many people go to the beach and they've had no base, and of course they're going to burn.
Mhm.
So if you can build that up to where you have a base tan and then go to the beach, you may be able to spend 20 or 30 minutes without, suntan lotion.
Yeah.
If you build it, it's kind of like running. You don't go run 10 miles if you've never ran before.
Mhm.
You build up to it. You build up. Same with tanning. You've got to get that sun, and that's your body's way of dealing with it. Is by having a light tan.
Yeah, when I do my runs now, I try to run if it's not cold because it's been cold lately, but I try to run without a shirt on
Yeah,
just for that reason, just to get sun on. And it's more comfortable for me to run that way too. But I'd mainly do it now because I'm trying to get more sunlight. So that's been a great way for me to get some sun in the afternoon is to take my shirt off while I'm running.
yeah, and that's going to be interesting as we get to the spring and summer to see, if you don't burn as quickly. It
I
would be
hope
a
not.
Yeah, I know that'll be a real good test.
Yeah, I've learned my lesson with being in the sun for too long. I've
Yeah,
been very, very burnt many times in my life with water blisters and everything from the sun. So I don't like to go nowhere without my sunscreen in the summertime. Now in the wintertime, I don't have to use it. Like right now, I haven't used sunscreen in a couple months probably at this point because
good.
it's been cold. But during the summer, I gotta have it.
And then next time you're in my office, I'll test you. There's well, the FDA doesn't recognize vitamin F, but there's a vitamin F. Just like there's A, B, C, D, E.
Mhm.
Vitamin F has to do with fatty acids, and a lot of people, if you're deficient in that, that will help. That'll let you burn easier. Like giving you a supplement may help you not burn as easily. It's really interesting. The physiology behind that. That
Yeah, I may have to try that out. I'm
yeah,
definitely not against that.
yeah.
So, speaking of sunscreen, what first of all, when should you use sunscreen? And then, like, what kind of sunscreen do you recommend?
Okay, that's a good question. Uh, you should use sunscreen as little as possible. I think that's more toxic, than the sun. But I understand you don't want
Mhm.
to get burned because I always told you that's rule number one. And so, like you said earlier, if you know you're going to burn, if you know you're at the beach and you have not gotten, a base tan, yes, get suntan lotion. And then I always tell people, I'm not going to do that homework for you. You figure out, you do your own research on what, because I want people to learn as they start to look at the chemicals in the sunscreen. So I know I sound like a jerk sometimes because I'll say to my patients, I'm not going to tell you what sunscreen. You figure it out. Google, look, listen to podcasts. What's the best sunscreen? And then you can become real educated on the different type of sunscreens. But obviously, you're going to want something with as little chemicals in it as possible. So I don't have a good answer for that. I tell people you figure it out, and then you tell me if it worked well for you because I'd like to know.
Yeah, there's definitely I've definitely heard a lot of bad things about the sunscreens. You see a lot of stuff on the internet now with, like you said, with all the chemicals and stuff in it. So that's kind of been something I've been looking into recently is what kind of sunscreen should I be wearing because I gotta wear it or I'm gonna be burnt. So
Right,
I don't want to like harm myself any more than I have to. So
right. Yeah, no, that's really a good topic for you, and then for you to try different ones and see,
mhm.
which ones not just protect you, but seem to have the safest ingredients in them.
Yeah, I've tried several kinds out. I know which ones work, but I don't necessarily know which ones are the best for me. So that's something I'll have to look more into that myself.
Yeah, I really would. I'd be curious to because you're studious and diligent in your studies, and I would like to know what work because you are fair skinned. You are definitely going to need it at times. That's just your genetics, and I
Mhm.
would like to know what you find out because it means more coming from you than me.
Yeah, would you ever say is there ever a time when you would recommend somebody not to wear sunscreen or like a specific person not to wear sunscreen?
Well, I typically my patients and friends that are black, I tell them, they need more sun. The darker your skin, the more sun you need.
Mhm.
And people. This sounds funny, but a lot of white people don't realize black people can burn. Depending
Mhm.
on the texture of their skin. But they have to really experiment, but so many of them are deficient in vitamin D, and it's not a racist thing. I always joke, because sometimes somebody will say to me, a black person will say, "It's not fair. I need to get more sun than you." And I'm like, "Well, it's not fair that you age better than I do. Their skin, ages better." Uh,
Mhm.
so I would, somebody like that. I It makes me nervous when I see parents, lathering up their kids with sunscreen lotion, and I think that is so dangerous. Now, again, if the kid is very fair skinned and they're going to the beach, I understand it, but people have this unwarranted fear, of the sun. And anytime I've ever asked a person that was doing it, I said, "Have you ever studied, the benefits of sun versus the risks?" Like, kids need sun. It's good for their brain, their bones. It's good for their heart, their lungs. It's good for everything in their body. And the research is out there, but there's no money in that. You know, the sunscreen lotion industry is a $10 billion a year industry. 10 billion.
Yeah, it's
And
it's expensive for sure.
yeah, it's
Mhm.
like, and if we can, let me just say this: the big question people always have is, skin cancer, and that's a legitimate question. But I've never met a person who I've talked to about this. I put it in perspective. I said, well, let's put this in perspective. There's two types of skin cancer. There's called the melanoma and the non-melanoma. Okay, so the non-melanoma, that's your squamous cell, basal cell. That's what you get on the areas that are exposed to the sun, like your arms. You hear people get that. Well, of all the people who get that, it's about 700,000 cases per year. But listen to this, Murphy. Less than half of 1% of people who get squamous cell or basal cell carcinoma die from it. You know, 2,500 people died from that. Now, it stinks when anybody dies, but let's put this in perspective. You have 2,500 deaths from squamous cell and basal cell carcinoma a year. 2,500. Guess how many people drown in a year in the United States?
Oh, it's probably way more than that. It's got to
Yeah,
be.
wait on that. 4,500. So think about this: 4,500 people drown. 2,500 people die from, squamous cell and basal cell. So nobody's asking us to ban swimming, right? Like, let's
Mm.
close all the lakes, all the pools, because 4,500 people die, and if nobody went in the water, nobody would die. But that'd be ridiculous, because
Mhm.
the benefits of swimming and being out in the water, far out exceed the risks. So that's what I tell people about the sun. And this is very interesting too. The people who get that non-melanoma carcinoma, the skin cancer, those people are typically in their 60s, and they have other conditions. And my belief, now this is just my personal belief, is it's not the sun that's causing their cancer, it's their sweat. Now, let me explain that. If you and I were both 60 years old, let's say, two people 60 years old, and we worked outside together for 40 years, same job, and we're the same age, same height, same weight, but your diet is so much cleaner than mine. So now we're both 60 years old. We've been in the sun the same amount of time for 40 years. All those years that you've been sweating, your sweat was less toxic than mine because you eat better than me. So 40 years of toxic sweat on my body, that's what causes skin cancer. It's not the sun. The sun is just pulling those toxins out of your body through sweat. If your sweat's not toxic, you don't get skin cancer. So it's not the sun. And then the other kind of cancer, is a melanoma. And that's a little more deadly, but still there's only 8,500 deaths per year from melanoma. And there's now studies that show getting more sun decreases your risk of melanoma. That just blows people's mind. But the studies are out there, and people get this type of skin cancer like on their back, not on
Mhm.
the areas exposed to the sun. They're getting on the parts of their body that's covered, their back, which is crazy. So if the sun was causing it, it would be on their face or on their arms, but it's
Mm-hmm.
not. And way more people, die from car accidents. 43,000, I think it is, die each year in this country in motor vehicle accidents. And we're not banning motor vehicles, nor should we. But almost five
Mm-hmm.
times more people, die from that than from melanoma. So yes, there's a risk to being out of the sun, but then you compare it to all the benefits, and you're like, oh, wait a minute, the benefits greatly exceed the risks, especially if you live in a healthy life and not having all these toxins coming out on your skin. Does that make sense?
Yeah. That the sweat thing was interesting. I've never heard of the sweat thing before. So that, but that kind of makes sense when you say it like that. I've never thought of it that way, but that makes a lot of sense.
Oh, like,
And oh, go ahead.
well, I was gonna say no, like the first words in the Bible, "Let there be light." God's first words, "Let there be light." You know, the sun is good. You are the light of the world. Like the sun is what provides us with light. It's energy. It's the plants need it. And even think about this. If you had a carnivore on here talking about diet, a carnivore and a vegetarian, and they're arguing, which I wouldn't argue with either one of them, like whatever works for you. But a carnivore and a vegetarian have one thing in common. They're both eating food that has been out of the sun,
Mm-hmm.
right? Carnivore, you're eating meat, you want it to be grass fed, you want it to be outside. Vegetarians eating fruits and vegetables. If no matter who you are, if you followed a diet that your only rule was this food has to have been out in the sun, you're going to be eating a clean, healthy diet. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, that's true.
So, yeah, the sun's important.
And the point to where you said increased sun exposure actually decreased the skin cancer. That makes a lot of sense because it's almost like you're building up a tolerance to the sun. Like the more sun you
Yes,
get, the more
yes,
you're able to get more sunlight. So that makes a lot of sense to me. I could definitely see how that study is true there.
yes, yeah. And there's so many. Well, think about this. Imagine if there was a drug that could boost your immune system and fight not just bacteria but viruses as well. That drug would be so popular and so in demand. Guess what? The sun does that. If there was a drug that could enhance your mood, naturally by balancing your serotonin and dopamine levels, it'd be so popular and expensive, and and people would love it. The sun does that. It helps you sleep better. We talked about melatonin. It regulates melatonin, which is what gets you to sleep better. I'm not a fan of melatonin supplements. I'm a fan of getting more time in the sun so your body knows when it's time to sleep and it produces more melatonin. And it goes on and on. If there was a drug to strengthen your bones, get rid of restless legs, help with your blood pressure, help reverse erectile dysfunction, which a lot of men have because they're taking blood pressure meds. The sun is a vasodilator. It'll decrease the pressure in your blood vessels and allow more blood to go to all the organs of the body. People who have skin lesions or like psoriasis, eczema, they go to the beach, they get in that salt water. With the water, the grounding of the sand and the sun, like all these things. And even you, like as a well, now you're a former bodybuilder, now you're a triathlete. uh, sun exposure increases protein synthesis in the muscles. Like all these benefits. And yet more and more people are being told to stay out of the sun, wear sun lotion every time they go out, put a hat on, put sunglasses on, and we wonder why we have so much chronic disease. This is a big part of it.
Yeah, as a kid, I always was kind of scared of the sun just because I always got burnt. So I lived under sunscreen, but I never really. I was always out in the sun, like always. As a kid, I played all kinds of sports growing up. I was always outside. I didn't spend a lot of time inside. I spent as much as I could outside. So I definitely, not realizing it, I got a lot of these benefits from the sun that you're speaking
Right.
of. Because I grew up fairly healthy kid. I didn't have any I didn't have any health problems really. I was very active, always outside because I practiced all the time. I loved playing outside with my friends, so I definitely can tell that I received those benefits from it. Even though I did get burned, so I did live under sunscreen a lot, but I was always outside, so I was always getting the sun. So I definitely can see the benefits from that.
Right. And you do so many things right. Like you do, and unfortunately, in a sense, you don't need a whole lot of sun, but you spend a lot of time outdoors because of all the benefits of it. So you probably, genetically would do better in a northern climate. I grew up
Mm-hmm.
in New York. I never want to go back up there. I like it down here. But the lighter your skin, the more fair your skin, the more adapted your body is. But I still say you can still build that tan. These next couple of months, if you really work on building a tan, I'll be so curious. And like I said, we'll check you for some vitamin F. And I'd love for this summer you to be way more tolerant, of the sun. That would be really exciting.
I mean, yeah, that would be nice for me. The less I can get burnt, the better, because it's not
Yeah.
fun being burnt.
No.
I've done it one too many times, and I don't care to do it again. So, would you say? I don't know. I had a. All right, never mind. Well, you talked about kids just a second ago. You talked about kids and how important it is for kids to get sunlight. Well, we know nowadays kids are staying inside more. They're playing video games more. They're scrolling on social media more. So how is it more important for a kid to get sunlight than it would an adult, or would you
Yeah.
say it's equally important?
Well, in a sense, it's equally important, but in another sense, it's even more important for kids
Mm-hmm.
because they're growing. That sunlight, you get enough sunlight during the day, and then in the evening, if you minimize the amount of time they're on the TV or the computer or their phone or their iPad in the evening, because that's fake light, that artificial light, that gives you what's called a lot of blue light, which stimulates
Mm-hmm.
your brain to think it's daytime, and that's bad because then these kids are going to bed and their brain thinks it's daytime. Well, if they minimize screen time at night, when they go to sleep, their body produces growth hormone. If it's not, excited from all that blue light, kids need growth hormone because they're growing. They produce so much growth hormone. Sleep is, we look at babies, we all know how important sleep is for babies, but as they get to be 5, 6, 7, 8, they also need to be outside. They need to be barefoot as much as possible while they're outside. And they need to have as little, and this goes for all of us, as little artificial light in the evening as possible. I mean, this would solve so many. It's not the only thing, of course. I always talk like there's about 10 tools I use to build people's health, but this is a major one of them. Sunlight.
Could you do you think it could stunt like their growth, like their physical growth, and even or mental growth as well?
Absolutely. I mean, look at, just a simple experiment. Take two plants, put one on one side of your house that gets the sunlight, and the on the other side of the house that don't get sunlight. Water them both equally. You know what's going to happen.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. I haven't thought of it that way, but I mean, yeah, that's a direct comparison right there.
Yeah, no, we need, and again, the problem with so much in healthcare, people get excited about one piece of the pie, like sunlight, and they
Mm-hmm.
think that's the only thing you have to do. Other people it's exercise, other people it's diet, other people it's supplements, other people it's whatever, grounding. But these, it's like building a house. You need a bunch of tools. Sunlight is one, but it's such a vital, vital one for all of us. But especially to answer your question, especially for kids. And I'll just throw this in too. It bothers me to see so many kids, kindergarten, first grade, second grade, playing little league baseball under artificial light at 6, 7, 8 o'clock at night. They should be home with very little light, getting ready for bed and waking up early with sunrise. But they're exhausted and they're going to school, and we're putting them under all this artificial light at nighttime and giving them junk food. And we wonder why we have all these, health problems in our kids. It's it's obvious if you know what you're looking for. Let them play during the day as much. I know this is kind of crazy, but I would love to see a lot of the schools down here, especially like in September and October, and then April into May. Let every kid in every school spend the first hour of the day outside. At school, be outside.
Yeah, that's a good point. I wonder. Yeah, that's a good idea. I doubt they would ever do something like that,
Right,
but
it's hard to implement, but it's yeah, it would be wonderful. It really would.
yeah, the light is something that I never really looked too much into. I've heard a lot about it recently. We don't need all this artificial light, and the blue light and things like that. But definitely, like you said, the processed foods and stuff. That's definitely. I mean, that one's a easy. It's so easy to notice nowadays. I think people are finally starting to open up their eyes about all the processed food, and you're starting to see a lot of. You're starting to see like a health wave going now on social media.
Yeah,
A lot of people are getting rid of the processed foods, trying to eat more whole foods, and that's something that me personally, I've definitely trying my best. I hadn't cut all of them out, but I'm pretty close to cutting them out. I do like to have some sometimes, but for the most part, I'm strictly whole foods. Eating, like you said, eating food that's from the sun. So meat,
right.
vegetables, fruits. But the sun, the light is the one thing I do need to work on. The getting all the artificial light, the blue light, especially late at night.
Yeah,
I'm not the best at staying away from that. I will admit.
yeah. No, but you know what? Everything you just said about junk food, everything you just said, I agree with 100%. But it's also that's the next frontier. Those same principles apply to light.
Hmm.
So like junk light, not getting, we get too much artificial light, too many, the lights in our house, the LEDs. They used to be fluorescent light bulbs, was it. And that was better because they were more full spectrum, but they used a lot of energy, a lot of electricity. So now we have these LED, which are just like blue lights, and they're not good for our brain. So that's like the junk food, junk light. In the evening after the sun sets, we should be minimizing the amount of light we have. Just like, and again, you can have a little bit here or there. Just like you said, occasionally some junk food is not going to kill you. But if
Hmm.
90+% of your diet is clean, you're going to be healthy. If your light diet, if you would, getting some light, most days, and then sometimes you're not able to, and some days you stay up late, and some days you're at a ballpark and there's a light. That's not going to hurt you. It's just, but we do it over and over and over, and we wonder why we're having all these health problems.
Do you think the artificial light during the day is still bad for you, or is it just at night and in the mornings?
Well, it's still bad, but it's less bad, okay?
Hmm.
Because your brain is wired for blue light during the day
Hmm.
because you're awake. Now, what happens is we get too much of the blue light if we're in front of computer screens. In fact, I'll tell you a quick story. One of my patients, she had real bad pain in her shoulder, down her arm, into her hand, and it was a strong tingle and really aggravated her. And I adjusted her, and I got her neck perfectly aligned, but she still was having the problems. So I said to her, do you use a computer at work? And she said, not only do I use a computer, I have two monitors. And she's on it all day long. And well, anyway, make a long story short, I gave her a magnet, told her to get rid of one of the screen monitors and to spend 5 to 10 minutes outside barefoot every day, every morning. That's grounding. Within 2 weeks, her pain was gone. Like she was being polluted electrically. All that electromagnetic light, radiation from the computer screens. I had another patient. She was sleeping. She had the TV on 24/7, even while she slept in her bedroom, and had a light on. And I told her get a little tiny, yellow night light and turn your TV off. Her health improved dramatically. It's fascinating the role of light, the role light plays in our health. It's really fascinating.
Yeah, I don't think a lot of people realize that this light is affecting them. I think this is something that we need to push more out there
Oh God, yeah.
for
No,
people to understand. Because I think now people are starting to catch on to all the junk food, the processed food and stuff.
yes,
But people are not. I don't think they're catching on to this whole light thing that it's affecting them. I don't think people realize having artificial light in your house is having an effect on like your sleep, your mood, and
right.
even health benefits. Like you said, your patient was having. health problems from it. So I think this narrative needs to be pushed out there more. And
Yeah.
I am starting to see it though. I'm starting to see more and more people talk about it.
Yes. Well, the one of the problems with it is again, you're not really selling anything. So big companies and researchers don't want to delve into it because they're not going to profit from it.
That's true.
And but I mean, these are the being healthy is easy. It really is. It's the fundamentals. You know, there's nothing new under the sun. You know, King Solomon knew what he was talking about. Like there's nothing new. The principles of being healthy are the same as they've always been. You got to exercise, eat right, sleep, manage stress. You know, have a spiritual component to your life. Be outside. It's not complicated. We complicate it. We have all these new gadgets, and you know, we don't need all that.
You mentioned you gave your patient a magnet. What is the idea behind the magnet?
Um, I find that people who spend a lot of time with electrical devices, um, I can I can test them to see if they're getting too much electricity. Again, next time you come in, I'll show you. It's hard to describe this, but it's just a muscle test, and I'll just see if having their phone, if they hold their phone close to their body, if that makes them weak, a muscle go weak, then I give them a magnet to keep in their pocket. And it just helps negate all the electricity. It's a couple of years ago, I'm not a golfer, but a lot of golfers started wearing those magnetic bracelets. It helps them. It helps with carpal tunnel and arthritis. So it's just a way to combat some of the electromagnetic stress and pollution that our bodies are subjected to. Not everybody needs one, but yeah, it's real interesting. Yeah, in fact I gave one to a guy one time, but I told him you got to keep this one side next to your body. Anyway, I said keep this side. It looks like a credit card, so it's like a card. Um, One side has a little bit of a like a shiny side, and then the other side is more of a like a little carpet on it, like carpeting. But anyway, I told him keep the carpeting side close to your body. And he did that, but I forgot to tell him to only keep it on the front of his body. So he went home, and that night he's such a good patient that he put it under his pillow. But if you put it on the back side of your body, you got to flip it over. So the shiny side, magnets have positive and negative poles. But anyway, he
Mm.
had the magnet on the wrong side for that side of the body. And he came back the next day and said, I can't use this magnet. It messed me up. I slept horribly. And when he told me how he did, that he used the magnet under his head, I said, oh my God, no, 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 no. You had it on the wrong side. That's my fault. I didn't tell you to flip it over if you put it on the other side of your body. But it impressed me how much of a change it made in him, is my point. Even though it was a negative change,
Mm.
which was predictable because he had it the wrong way. Does that make sense? Like,
Yeah, that's interesting. I never heard of somebody using a magnet like that before, but it makes sense though because, like you said, a magnet has a positive and a negative, and if you actually take two magnets and you put the positive and negative in together, they
yes,
resist each other. They'll push each other
exactly.
away.
They either attract or repel. So yes.
Yeah.
So if you take the cloth side, I should have said the cloth side, and you put it on the front of your body, that side of that magnet will strengthen you electromagnetically. Are you still able to see my video? Because I
No, your video went out. I can hear your voice, but your video went out.
okay, good. I want to make sure I'm not messing anything up here. All right.
No, it's fine. It's all right. But yeah, the magnets, that's interesting. I never heard of somebody doing that before, but it makes sense. And it may be something I need to experiment with because I work at a computer like the lady you mentioned. I sit at a desk majority of the day, not all day. A lot of times I will get up and walk around our job site and stuff, but for the most part, I'm in front of a computer screen all day.
But I have I have magnets at my office. I see a lot of college kids have problems with it because they live on their phone. They
Hmm.
sleep with their computer, their laptop next to their head, which is insane. And they wear AirPods all day. Like,
Yeah.
that's not good.
Yeah. I like to wear my AirPods too, but I only wear them when I'm working out. I don't wear them all day like that.
Yeah, no, there's people all day. Well, there's people all day long.
Hmm. There was something else. speaking of the light, are you one of the people that that has the red lights all over their house at nighttime? You turn on all the red lights.
No, I don't.
You don't do that?
I don't think that's a bad idea necessarily, but I really believe this: if you just try to minimize light exposure in the evening, like I have normal. So in the evening, I have my normal lights. I just try not to keep many of them on, and
Mhm.
then when I go to bed, I do have these little night lights in my bathroom, in my hallway. If I have to go into the kitchen or something, that are they're bright enough. But no, I don't have the red light. Um, but I understand that the concept behind it. But no, I don't want to be that extreme yet. And I may someday. But I'll say this though too, and I could be wrong about this. I do think our bodies evolve over time. Evolution's
Mhm.
not a bad word; it's a scientific word. Um, well, our bodies adapt to things. So I think if you are never around blue light, and then let's say you do go to your kid's high school football or your nephew's high school football game, you'd be shocked. Like your body would be shocked by all that light, and that would be bad. Like
Mhm.
again, like sun, you got to build up. I think we can build up a little tolerance to the blue light. Our bodies have adapted to it. Is my point, and I think that's
Mhm.
almost like an evolutionary thing that our body is used to some blue light at night. We just don't want to bombard it with blue light.
Does the sun itself give off blue light?
Yes, yes, yes. But
Because I don't really understand like what blue light is and why it's called blue light. Is that just like the color of the
uh,
wavelength or something?
yes, yes, the colors of the rainbow. So the you remember that Roy, GB, IV, that
Yeah.
red, orange, yellow. Okay, so the sun has all those colors, and but early in the morning you get a lot of the reddish orange. Then you get some of that in the evening.
Mhm.
But during the day, you're getting more and more blue light. That's telling you it's daytime. You're alive. You're awake. That's good. Blue light's not bad, but blue light in the evening when the sun is going down, and traditionally you would have maybe a candle or a fireplace, that more red, amber, orange type light. That blue light tells your brain it's daytime, we're going to be doing stuff. You don't want to tell your brain that at night. So that's the problem with the blue light. It's not blue light, it's the timing of the blue light. You don't want it
Mhm.
in the evening. And all of our light bulbs is blue light. That's because that's what helps you to see things. It's a good color for reading and stuff. So all your computers, they're all blue lights.
Yeah, that makes sense. I've always heard the term blue light, but I didn't actually understand what they were referring to. But that makes sense. It's like the color of the actual light, like the wavelength of it. So that makes sense. I was wondering like how the sun could give off blue light and a computer could give off blue light, but it's because it's based off the color. It's not like the source.
Right, right. And that's why I said blue light during the day is not necessarily bad from a computer because your brain knows it's supposed to get a good bit of blue light. You got the blue sky during the day. It's it's really not. You don't want the blue light at night. That's the big thing.
Is there ever a time where good light, where blue light is good for you?
Well, yeah, during the day.
So you would
Yeah.
say it's a good thing to have blue light because it tells you how you need to be awake. You should be.
Well, yeah, but when I say yes, I say yes, meaning you get it from the sun.
Yeah.
And if you get it from the computer, it's less damaging to you because your brain knows it's daytime, so it's
Hmm.
less damaging. So that's kind of like I'm not a big fan of coffee, but your brain is more wired to have coffee in the morning than in the evening. It's gonna You drink coffee at night, you're gonna be up all night.
Yeah. So speaking of vitamin D, so I know you say it's best to get it naturally from the sun. I get that, but what is your opinion on supplementing with vitamin D? Will is it as good as the sun? Probably not. I probably already know the answer. But and is that sufficient? Like, is it sufficient to supplement with vitamin D instead of getting it from the sun?
Yes and no, and it's a hard question to answer because again, everybody's different.
Mhm,
So if a person is so deficient in vitamin D, on a blood test, and they're having a lot of health problems, by all means supplement it with vitamin D. In fact, I have a 50,000 unit international unit vitamin D in my office that you only have to take like once a week. That's a high dose. But I've had patients that really helps. But
mhm.
ideally, I don't want you to have to take vitamin D. So ideally, you'd get enough from the sun and would never have to supplement it. And when you take a supplement of any type of supplement, if it's not a whole food supplement, and that 50,000 unit one is one of the few products I have in my office that's not whole food. It's just a pure synthetic supplement, which I don't like, but they have their place. You take any supplement, it should be whole food based, not synthetically made. Like you're not made to. Our bodies were designed to have just ascorbic acid. Now, every vitamin C company, that's all it is ascorbic acid, and that's legal. But in an orange, you have ascorbic acid, but you have all these other phytonutrients, antioxidants, bioflavonoids. A whole food. There's a complex of nutrients. So I don't like nutrients that are isolated. I just don't. But they do have their place. Like again, if somebody was so deficient.
Is there is there a way to tell that somebody's vitamin D, like they're lacking vitamin D, like they need to supplement with them? Is there something that stands out there that say, hey, yeah, you're definitely uh um
Well, there is it's a blood test. So the blood test is like the last 5 years. It seems like everybody gets their vitamin D tested now and is told that they're low in vitamin D. Um, and instead of telling them to spend more time in the sun, they prescribe them with vitamin D. Um, for me, it would be more. I just like look at a person. So again, you're very healthy, so you're fair skinned, but you're not pasty. You know what I mean. I have patients that come in; they just look so pale and pasty and sickly. They're probably deficient in vitamin D. In fact, though, most people are deficient in vitamin D because we're told not to go out in the sun and to wear
mhm.
sunscreen. So and then I do a lot of muscle testing in my office. So I'll muscle test a person to see if I think they need vitamin D. And like I said, sometimes people do, and I'll give them that. I have a whole food one, but it's not near as high of a dose as that 50,000 synthetic one. But sometimes you need that to help pull you out of a rut.
Mhm.
But this should all be avoided. We should not be dealing with vitamin D deficiencies.
Yeah, I don't think I'm sufficient in vitamin D. I mean, insufficient, but I was just curious if there was something that like I needed to look out for. Like if I ever notice this, hey, that's a sign. Maybe I need some vitamin D. But
Yeah. Now again, your overall health is so good. Um, you're doing so much right. Um, yeah. I would be shocked if your levels were off.
is there a do you off the top of your head, do you know what the normal range is for vitamin D? Like if you were to get a blood test?
Well, they measured in two different ways, and gosh, I should know this off the top of my head. I always say higher, but they'll say like 30 uh, to 30 or 40 is normal. I say over 40. Um, I forget the units that is, but yeah, it's. I mean, you could just Google that and make whatever it says on the internet. Just Google, just make it a little bit higher.
Mhm.
Like during COVID, anybody who's had high levels of vitamin D, it was almost impossible for them to get COVID, which is that's another fascinating thing. And yet you're not going to hear the studies are out there, but you're not gonna see those studies.
So what would you so for people that live in the north in regions where sunlight is limited, what would you say to those people of how can they still obtain those health benefits from the sun um, without as much sunlight available to them, especially during the winter months?
Um, it's going to come back to this. Okay, so I grew up in New York City. they're going to have to spend more time in the summer in the sun. Okay,
Mhm.
so right now we just had what, a little over 10 days ago, the shortest day of the year. So here, that was 10 hours. Our day was only 10 hours long, and our longest day of the year in June will be 14 hours long. So we go from 10 hours to 14 hours. Up in New York, for example, they'll go from 9 hours to 15 hours. We go from 10 to 14, they go 9 to 15. So they have more sunshine in June than we do by an hour, but they have an hour less than we do in December. Here's my point. Because they get more sunshine in that half of the year, I tell them you've got to get absorb as much sunshine as possible. It's like putting money in the bank. The more tan they can get, the more vitamin D they're going to store. So then when you get to this part of the year where, their bodies know they're not going to get much sunlight, they've got vitamin D in reserve. Same with us. The best time to not get the flu is by getting sun exposure in June, July, and August. That's it. If you don't want to get the flu, get out in the sun in June, July, and August. I just know these past 2 weeks, I can't tell you how many people I know that were sick during Christmas. I mean, and they laugh at me. They say, "You spend too much time in the sun." I'm like, "I don't ever get sick." Like so. People up north, to answer your question, I tell them spend as much time as possible in the sun in those summer months because you're going to be. And so again, your tan is like a bank account. You got to store that vitamin D up because you're not going to have as much in the winter. And then in the winter, whenever it is sunny, even if you're bundled up, get your face and your eyes out of that sun.
Yeah, I didn't realize you could kind of bank it up like you were saying.
Yeah.
I didn't know it worked like that. I thought you kind of just had to restart every day.
No, isn't that funny? Like, it's really interesting that I would love to do. Again, there's no money in this though because you're not selling anything. But let's say we just
Mhm.
took 100 people, 200 people, 100 of them really worked on getting tan this summer, June, July, August, and the other we kept them out of the sun as much as possible. The other 100, and then just monitored how each group did during flu season. I guarantee you, the one that got more suntan in the summer would be much more healthier through the flu season, cold and flu season, than the ones that didn't get sun. And nobody looks at that. It'd be a simple test, but even if so, let's say I was right. You can't sell vitamin. Well, you can sell vitamin D, but you can't sell sunshine, and and it would hurt the drug companies. The drug companies don't want you to be healthy during cold and flu season. The doctor's offices don't want you to be healthy. I don't get me down that rabbit hole, but like,
No, it makes sense though. So you talk about sunlight like I've heard some. I can't remember who told me this or who said this. Somebody online that I watch. They said if they were talking about sleep. They said if you could bottle up sleep and sell it, you would be a cajillionaire. Like
yes,
you would make so much money. You're saying so. You're basically saying the same thing. If you could bottle up sunlight and sell it to people, you can make all the money you ever wanted to.
the same thing with sunlight, like you just said, sleep, and imagine an exercise.
Hmm.
All the benefits you get from exercising. If you could put that in a pill, you'd be a multimillionaire. And again, these are the basics that don't change, but we don't get told this enough. And imagine cleaning up your diet. So, like, imagine, I don't mean you, just the average person, get them to eat less than 10% of their diet being processed. So they can have a cookie once in a while. I'm not saying they can't, but like 90% of the diet is really clean. Make that into a pill. Make exercise into a pill. Make sleep into a pill. Make sunshine into a pill. These, instead of making them into a pill, make them the pillars of a good, healthy program. It's not complicated. You get your body. I always say this: give your body, create an environment that's conducive to healing, and your body will heal itself. Those four are the pillars right there.
Yeah,
That's
I
it.
like how you said take the pill and make it into a pillar. I like that.
Exactly.
That's a good quote right there.
Yeah, I just made that up. I'm going to use that now.
Hey, you have to.
You can use it. Go ahead. Yeah.
So, what would you say the importance of sunlight is for pregnant women specifically, that, or a woman that's trying to conceive?
Um, okay, so let's take that as two questions. For a pregnant woman, um, again, it's one of the pillars. Just because what we just said, it's one of the pillars of health. She definitely doesn't want to be getting sunburned. We know that.
Yeah.
Uh, but my gosh, if she can get out in the sun and have a nice tan, everybody looks better and feels better with the tan. I
Mm.
mean, the benefits to that baby, my gosh, the overall health of the mother is so vital. And then for a woman that wants to conceive, the same thing. What's funny, Murphy? In any condition at all, the answers from my perspective, the answer is always the same: get healthy. How do
Mm.
you get healthy? That's what we're talking about. How to get healthy. And again, a healthy body heals itself. It's it's so simple.
Would you say a pregnant woman or woman trying to conceive, would you say they need more sunlight than they typically would, or would you think it's about the same as normal?
No, I would think they need a little bit more once they're pregnant because again, you're eating for two. You're
Hmm.
doing everything for two. I guess the key thing is you don't want to be deficient. Um,
Yeah.
and a woman who's trying to conceive, like if a woman was in my office right now and said she's, her and her husband are hoping to conceive, yeah, that's one thing I'd say get more sunlight because she's probably deficient in it already. Because that's just
Hmm.
average. Most people are going to be deficient in sunlight. Um, but imagine, a couple, a young couple now this is not reality, but imagine being able to spend 3 weeks, at the beach, in let's say September when it's still nice out down here, and you eat real good. You go for walks on the beach, so you get the exercise, the fresh air, you get grounding, you get sunlight, you go to bed on time. The sights, the sounds, the colors, everything is, my gosh, that's so conducive to producing conceiving a healthy child.
Yeah, that makes sense. I was just, and I guess the same goes for the male, the man, and that
Absolutely.
they should get more.
Hey, can you imagine? I never thought of this before, but imagine having a fertility clinic, but people went there and stayed there for 3 to 4 to 6 weeks. But it was, like a resort, like a beach area. And again, all the things we're talking about: sunlight, water, fresh air, sleep. Wake up in the morning, pray. Like it would be wonderful.
Yeah, that's interesting. I bet you the numbers would probably skyrocket very
Yeah,
quickly.
yeah. It's just so. I like what you said earlier too. This is just a message that just needs to get out more.
Hmm.
People need to hear. They just don't know, and they've been. Again, that's the skin cancer is the first thing they always talk about. And I said, wait a minute, let's. I tell them about what I told you before. It's the toxins coming out of them. They got toxic sweat, so they got to clean up the inside of their body, which is why people don't get these cancers until they're in their 60s. It's accumulation of all these toxins, and now it's coming out on their skin for years and years and years. And really, they're not deadly. There is some risk, but it's less risk than drowning and less risk of dying in a car accident. So the benefits greatly outweigh the risks. And yet we're not told this. And again, the sunglasses, the hats, the sunscreen for people who don't need it is such a mistake. Again,
Hmm.
you have to be careful. You're fair skinned. I have several patients that way they have to be more careful. But I still think we could being more careful is going to include just being more diligent this time of the year, working on developing a base tan.
Yeah, you mentioned the narrative is just not put out there enough. I think personally I see it a lot nowadays, but that's because I'm in the fitness and health space. That's all
Right.
I do. I watch videos about fitness and health. I listen to podcasts about fitness and health. I listen to your podcast and other podcasts the same. So I'm starting to hear it a lot more and more now. It's starting to become more of a thing. But people that are not in this space, that are not fitness and health junkies, kind of like we are, they're not
Right.
hearing a lot. So we gotta, I think us as fitness people, health people, we gotta do our best to kind of put that message out there more. And that's kind of the idea of behind my podcast. I know that's what you're doing with your podcast and with your chiropractic practice. So I think we're going in the right direction. We're starting to spread that
Well,
awareness more and more.
now we are, and there's such, and even you and I, we have common, friends in common. Dustin Jackson, he's
Hmm.
great at promoting health and fitness, and he inspires people. And then of course Skip Platt. I mean,
Hmm.
he's got the ultimate workout routine. Not routine, he's got the ultimate workout facility, his backyard, out in the
Hmm.
sun. Like he knows all this stuff. So it's really neat. And guys like, Dustin and Skip and you and myself, that, there's a bond between us that, like, we're just trying to help people. Nobody's selling anything in this arena. It's like, hey, we just want people to get healthier, and I always love that because, again, even the dermatologists and the sunscreen people, they're profit driven. The more people that don't get out of the sun, the unhealthier they're going to be. That's good for a doctor's business. And people don't believe me when I say that. I'm like, you don't have to believe me. But the studies are there. People who get sensible sun exposure are far healthier than people who don't. It's that simple.
It's funny you mentioned Skip's his facility, his workout facility is out in the sun because he is very, very tan. Like I feel like he's super tan,
Yes,
and that's because he's outside all the time. He's always outside working out, doing
yes.
his thing. So, and it makes sense. That's why he's so tan, and he probably don't have any of those. He's not affected by the sun like a lot of people because he's
No,
used to
no.
it.
He gets it. He understands.
Hmm.
He looks great. He's healthy. He's vibrant. Yeah.
All right, so one last question. I don't want to take too much of your time up. I know we've probably already answered some of this question, but is there any other myths or misconceptions about sunlight and health that you would like to debunk? Like something that we may have been lied to about in the past that you want people to know nowadays?
Well, we did kind of cover this, but I'll say this: we got to quit thinking about the sun as bad. First of all, we do understand the risks, but we understand the benefits. But I think the bigger message, and we could do another episode if you wanted one day about this, but the phrase circadian rhythm, your body's clocks, which we touched a little bit upon, and I won't get into that right now, but when your brain sees that morning sun, through your eyes, that just is so important because that's telling your body, okay, the day is starting. And again, your blood pressure has a normal elevation to it. You're breathing, everything's like pumping a little bit better, and you get going, and then you start producing more brain chemicals, and you feel good, and you're ready to work. And then you get that midday sun, and you're just reminding your internal clock, oh, it's middle of the day, okay, and you've got your digestive enzymes are being secreted, and you digest better. And then at the end of the day, and this is, I guess, what I want to leave you with, once the sun goes down, try not to eat much after the sun sets. Now, I mean, you could eat that first, especially like in December, the sun sets here at 5 o'clock. I mean, you can still eat by 7 o'clock, but you really don't want to be eating much later than when the sun goes down. Um, you should have at least 3 hours between your last meal and the time you go to bed. Um, so that when you go to bed, you're already done most of your digesting, and that gives your body time when you're sleeping to repair, and really do all the so much of the work it needs to do. It's called autophagy, repair. I pause because we could talk about this forever, but getting the right light at the right time of the day. So try to get some morning sunlight. If you can be outside barefoot as the sun rises, just for 5 or 10 minutes, that's ideal. Step outside, even in the summer, just for a minute or two, if it's in the summer, but midday. And then if you can, or somewhere around sunset, just spend a few minutes outside and then minimize the amount of blue light, artificial light at night. That right there, that is that's like eating 90% good food. That's like
Hmm.
exercising 4 times a week. It's one of those pillars that people are just not aware of, and it really, really, really makes a difference.
Yeah, you mentioned a little bit about the grounding and also a little bit about fasting. So those are two other topics I'm very interested in that I know you've been talking a lot about on your podcast recently. That we'll have to have you back on another day to talk about that because I know that's a whole other podcast in
Yeah,
itself. But I'm interested in those two. I'm actually about to start a 21-day fast with the church. So
yeah,
me and my wife decided we're gonna do dinner. So we're gonna cut out dinner because with as much working out and stuff I do, I just don't think it's smart to do like a whole fast. So
right.
I'm gonna do just the dinner. So that's gonna be something that it's gonna be hard for me because I'm not used to doing that. So I'm kind of looking forward to it because it's kind of a different challenge that I've never done something like
That's
that before.
fantastic, and that's exactly how I would recommend you do it. A lot of
Hmm.
people give up breakfast, and I understand that.
Hmm.
That's good too, but it's actually proven to be more beneficial health-wise to give up dinner rather than breakfast. Uh, so you and your wife, your last meal being whatever time during the day, you'll be going what 16 hours before between meals.
Yeah, it'll be I don't know the exact time. It'll be pretty long.
Well, yeah, let's just say anything over 12 is when your body 12 hours of not eating. So you'll be probably somewhere, depending on the day, between 12 to 18 hours of not eating. That
Hmm.
is unbelievably healthy for your body. Any old repairs, your mitochondria gets repaired, your genes get repaired, but you got to give the body the time to do it each night. I'm excited to hear how you do on that.
Yeah,
That
I'm interested to do it. I've never done any kind of fasting. Well, I've kind of done like intermittent fasting before, but not like on purpose. I just wasn't eating
right.
breakfast. I wasn't eating breakfast because I would work out so early in the morning, so I just
Yeah.
skipped it. But this
Now,
time, I'm like purposefully trying to fast, so I'm looking forward to seeing the results from it.
I am too. I'm excited for you and your wife. I think that'll be very, very interesting.
Yeah, I
Uh,
think breakfast is like I feel like that's the easy way out. I didn't want to take the easy way out. I wanted to make it hard, so we're
well,
doing dinner.
also too, and I didn't mention this, but back to the circadian rhythm, the clock of your body. Our bodies are hardwired to produce insulin in the morning. That you can't change that. We were made to eat breakfast. Um, it's just how we are, and we make less digestive enzymes and less insulin later in the day. We were not meant to be digesting. I'm not saying you can't eat dinner, but your dinner really should be the lightest meal of the day. And if you're going to
Hmm.
skip one, skip dinner, and then by the time you go to bed, your body is in that state of what we call autophagy, where it's making repairs, and you can be rebuilding 10% of 10 to 15% of your gut every night if you give it more than 12 hours of rest. But from one meal to the other, that's unbelievable. Like that one thing right there is unbelievable. So yeah,
Yeah,
and you might not do as much because you're already healthy, but I'll be curious.
yeah, I'll keep you updated on how it goes. I know I'm gonna be hungry the first few days because
Yeah,
I'm used to eating that big meal at night, but we'll see.
yeah. No, that's excellent. Well, you're doing a great work. I love your podcast. You're helping people, and I think what you do is awesome. And I've always told you you're inspiring to me. You do fitness right, in my opinion. You do it right, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you. I'm glad to hear. I try to as I get older, I get a little smarter as I go. I
Mm.
didn't do it this smart when I was younger, but now I'm getting a little older, so I'm starting to get a little wiser. So I'm trying to be smart. My goal is longevity. I want to feel like my 25-year-old self now. I want to feel like this when I'm 60. Like I want to be
Yeah,
still feel the same way. I want to be able to get outside and play with my grandkids and run around with them and do all the things I'm doing now. So that's my
yeah,
goal.
good. Yeah, you'll get it. You'll get it.
Well, yeah, that's about all I got for you today. If y'all haven't yet, go over and check out Dr. Burroughs' podcast. It's Get Healthy Alabama. He's on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all your podcasting platforms. Y'all go check him out over there. And any last words you want to say?
No, other than thank you for having me on. I really enjoyed this. This is great.
Oh yeah, thank you for joining the podcast. We'll have to get up another time and we can we can talk about the fasting and grounding a little bit more, because that's other topics that I'm interested in as well.
All right, sounds good.
But other than that, thank you again. Have a great day, and yeah, that's it. We'll catch y'all in the next episode of the Fitness Beginner Podcast.